All right, hello. Welcome to what I will call Stuck in Neutral Radio 6.5 here on March 21st, 2023. I just finished up a little while ago the podcast for today's episode and realized when I finished I did not really cover the Josh Williams situation. So I figured that it would probably be best if I go ahead and instead of not going over that and giving my opinion on that, give it its own little separate episode. So we'll call this the 6.5. I'll just go ahead and dive into this really quick. I know, just to catch everybody up, if you don't know what the Josh Williams situation is, I kind of skimmed over it in the podcast that you'll hear before this, if you listen to this before this. If you guys didn't watch this past weekend's race in Atlanta, the Xfinity race was on Saturday, and towards the end of the first stage, as if you watch the race, you'd know, the first two stages were an absolute clusterfuck. They were a mess. Multiple cautions. I had mentioned in the podcast previously, the episode 6 podcast, that there was the longest green flag run that we had in the first two stages was just 9 laps, which is not a lot. It's very sad that was the longest green flag run we had. And in the midst of those wrecks that we had in the first stage, there was a wreck that involved Josh Williams. Now, if you don't know who Josh Williams is, he's one of the drivers for one of the lower-end teams. I will tell him, I'll say it right now, he has a great mullet, great hairdo. He definitely looks like the southern redneck that you would expect to be driving in a NASCAR car. But he is kind of well known within some of the diehard NASCAR fans. He's been racing in the lower tier series in the Xfinity series for a bit now. And he's got a bit of a personality to him, I'll say that. And that's not in a bad way. That's in a good way. So what happened at the Xfinity race, though, just to catch you up a bit, Josh Williams was in the 92 car, as he has been for the last couple seasons, and got involved in one of the wrecks and had a little bit of front-end damage. It was still, like I said, it was still the first stage, so it's still fairly early on. So it was nothing terminal. They still could have raced plenty well. It probably wasn't going to be a race-winning car, but they definitely could have survived plenty longer and gained a bunch of spots and waited for the rest of the other cars to get involved in wrecks and gain spots there. So he comes down, and they showed it on the camera. They were throwing a bunch of bear bond all over it. And now, let me again point this out. It was pretty cold this past weekend in Atlanta. Now, just to kind of get people a little bit up to speed, with the bear bond, with how cold it was, it had trouble sticking. So if you have, for how cold the temperatures were, you had guys who were putting on the bear bond, and it actually, because it was so cold, it wasn't sticking properly, and it was actually starting to come off. And that's what happened to Josh Williams. So as they actually showed on the camera and on the broadcast, he was putting a bunch of bear bond over it, trying to tape up the front end as much as they can. They got him back out there. He was driving around for a bit, and then they had the camera back on him, and the bear bond was not sticking, and you could see it starting to come off. As he was even coming off pit road, it was starting to wrinkle up really bad, and even the guys in the broadcast were like, yeah, that doesn't look very good. So they go back green, though, and it was just a couple laps later, caution comes out for debris. And what ended up happening was the bear bond, and there was a ton of bear bond all in the front of Josh Williams' car. All that bear bond that was on the front of his car came off and went onto the track, which brought out the debris caution. What NASCAR ended up doing, though, was they parked Josh Williams for the rest of the race for bringing out, or they said extending the caution. Now, that is the one thing that I'm a little bit confused by, because he technically didn't extend the caution. They did throw the green flag They went like a lap or two, and then the caution came out. So it wasn't like they were pacing, and then the bear bond flew off, and then the caution was extended because of that. They went green, raced a lap or two, and then the caution came out. So, I mean, I guess if they want to categorize it as extending the caution, you could say that he kind of extended the caution. Still, I think that's a little bit of a stretch. Anyways, so they end up parking Josh Williams. Josh Williams is informed of this. I want to say it was Reed Sorensen. Now, if any of those diehard NASCAR fans who watch NASCAR for a long time obviously know who Reed Sorensen is, used to actually drive in the Cup Series years and years and years ago for Chip Ganassi Racing. That was, I believe, his most notable ride was the 41 car for Chip Ganassi Racing, that Target 41 car. At least to me, that was the most notable ride that he ever had. But he, I believe, was the spotter for Josh Williams in this race. So you can hear Reed Sorensen come over the radio and say to Josh, look, man, they parked you for the race. I have never heard of this rule before, but they parked you for extending the caution. And you can, and this is Reed Sorensen's words, you can do whatever you want. Like, he actually said that. He's like, you can do whatever you want to do, but I'm sorry, I've never heard of that rule before. So what did Josh end up doing? Josh ended up driving out to the start-finish line on the track, stopping, parking his car, turned it off. Now, granted, this is under caution. Parked the car, turned it off, took the window net down, got out of the car, walked away, and as he's walking down towards pit lane, across the grass, the infield grass, he's throwing up peace signs, he's waving at the crowd, giving them a big smile, blah, 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 walking all the way back to pit lane. He ends up going back into pit lane. I believe he went into his own box. Went back to his own box, I believe. Was walking back there. Officials were saying stuff to him. It was not picked up on camera that I could hear. There was something said to Josh that his response was, what does it matter? Or like, what do I care? What are they going to, and this is the part that I know for sure he said, what are they going to do? Fine me? I can't afford to pay it anyways. I got a good chuckle out of that. He ended up saying something to somebody else. He was about to do an interview. He gave he made a heart sign with his hand in front of the camera. This is just such Antonio Brown vibes. And he ended up walking away, getting into the back of the pickup for the AMR safety crew, AMR safety team, sorry, and went to the infield care center, and that was it. This stirred up a lot of talk and a lot of controversy. A lot of people online were very supportive of Josh, mostly because they felt that the call was complete BS, which, mind you, you can think two things at the same time and they can be on two different ends of the spectrum, which will be my opinion here in a second. But a lot of people have supported Josh, and I have two opinions on this. Number one, I agree. The call to park Josh Williams for the race was total BS. I thought that his car was well good enough to continue in the race. The bear bond didn't come off because of anything that the crew did wrong or that he did wrong. It was a cold afternoon in Atlanta. The bear bond just didn't stick. Any other time, usually, in any other weather conditions that aren't that cold, bear bond's going to stick just fine, and it's not going to go flying off going down the road. It's going to stay on the car, and it's going to do its job. Because of how cold it was, the bear bond just didn't stick, and that's the only reason why it came off the car. It was not Josh Williams' fault. It was not Josh Williams' crew's fault. There was nothing that they could have done that could have saved them from that scenario, because they didn't know that the bear bond wasn't going to stick. Now, what you saw later on was teams were, when they were involved in a wreck, they were actually heating the bear bond because they saw what happened to Josh and they saw the bear bond go flying off of Josh's car. They realized, wow, it is that cold. The bear bond's not even sticking. We better heat the bear bond so it actually stays and it sticks to the car. So you saw teams actually do that they were actually heating the bear bond so it would actually stick to their cars when they were involved in wrecks. So I completely agree that the call against Josh Williams to park him for the race was total BS. Now, with that being said, I think that what Josh Williams did was beyond childish and he deserves to be suspended. I'm not somebody to sit here and cheer on bad behavior. Not to mention the fact that the amount of support that he's gotten, good for him. But I cannot sit here and not point out the obvious double standard in this scenario. The immediate thing that comes to mind in this scenario is last year. Go look it up. Everybody ripped Kyle Busch for this. Last year at Darlington in 2022, Kyle Busch was involved in a wreck fairly early on in the race. This was, I believe, the spring race in Darlington. They were doing the throwback cars this weekend. I know that because Kyle Busch's car was a throwback M&M's car. Go back and look it up. It's all there on camera. And if you didn't know what was going on, I'll tell you what was going on and what the reaction was. What ended up happening was Darlington in the spring, Kyle Busch had his throwback car like everybody else, but he was involved in a wreck fairly early on in the race. Had damage to the right front. His day was pretty much over. He ends up coming down pit road. He goes to turn to get into the garage. So he's going down pit lane and he goes to make the left-hand turn into the garage. And he claimed at the time that the car just wouldn't turn. And he couldn't make the turn from pit lane into the garage area. So because he couldn't make the turn, he stopped the car, turned it off, got out of the car, and walked away. Kyle Busch ended up leaving the car on pit lane, making his way onto the garage area. So if you can imagine it, at Darlington, going down pit lane, there's the entrance from pit lane, left-hand turn onto the access area to get back to the garage area. He stopped right on that entrance. And he got ripped apart by so many people for this. Now, again, like I said, in his post-race interview, he claimed that he could not turn the car to get it into the garage area. Now, I don't know for sure. He probably could have made a better attempt, but knowing Kyle Busch, especially last year, he had a pretty awful year, and he was not a very great person. Like, he was not an easy person to cheer for last year. I'll just say that. So, to think that he parked it there on purpose out of just his, baby emotions, I would not put that past him, especially knowing Kyle Busch's history. But the number one thing that I will say is that when he did that and he just left his car on pit road and walked away from it, he got tore to shreds by everybody. Oh my God, the classic Kyle Busch throwing a temper tantrum. NASCAR needs to, suspend him. NASCAR needs to do this. What a, chicken, or not a chicken shit, but like, what a, baby bitch thing to do, blah, 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 blah. Everything under the sun got thrown Kyle Busch's way. Now, I am not a Kyle Busch fan. I have said I am a fair man, and I am unbiased, but knowing Kyle Busch's history, I can tend to see how it's hard to like or cheer for Kyle Busch, knowing his history, knowing how he has conducted himself for years. At this point, over a decade, how he has conducted himself. So I can understand where people would be very easy to judge Kyle Busch. But you cannot sit here and hound Kyle Busch for doing something that not only is not nearly as egregious as what Josh Williams did, but his car, according to his words, the only reason he left it there was because he had trouble actually turning the car, and the car was so terminal that he couldn't get it into the garage area. Again, that's his words. Don't know if that's true or not. Regardless, we'll take his word as, we'll take his word for it to be true. We'll just say that he's telling the truth. So Kyle Busch goes down pit road after having a terminal ending to his day. Can't make it into the garage area. Because he can't make it in the garage area, he stops the car on pit lane, gets out of the car, and walks away. Makes his way over to, the AMR safety team, wherever he can find them. He gets destroyed for it. Josh Williams, although a crappy penalty, gets penalized. He, although he has ability to, although his car is damaged and he does have ability to turn his car just fine. His car was just fine besides the damage. He decides to park it on the start-finish line on the track. It wasn't even like he put it on the apron. He put it on the fucking track, got out of the car, walked all the way across the grass, and then proceeded to the AMR safety team. For you to sit there and castrate Kyle Busch and cast him as this just terrible man who's, needs to be suspended and needs to be reprimanded and blah, 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 all this other bullshit that got thrown Kyle Busch's way back in Darlington of last year, and then to turn around this year and give the total opposite treatment to Josh and just say, oh, what a great move. W for Josh Williams. Free Josh Williams. What a guy. I'm a huge fan now. Let's support Josh Williams for what he did. What? Are you kidding me? Truthfully, if I'm NASCAR, and he probably will. Now, at the time that this is going to be released, it's going to be Tuesday, probably like 1 o'clock. It'll be an hour after the original episode goes up. And probably in the time frame of me releasing this, the determination of the penalty for Josh Williams will be released. Usually it happens on Tuesday afternoon at some point that the penalties are released for whatever happens that weekend. It's what happened for last weekend's penalties as well, was Tuesday. If I am NASCAR, I am penalizing Josh Williams at least $10,000. They threw the actions detrimental to NASCAR at Denny Hamlin. If anything, I think that the actions detrimental to NASCAR was way worse than what Josh Williams did, because made it look Busch League. What he did there made the Xfinity Series look even more Busch League than it already did with all the wrecks it had. Like, that solidified it 100%. It made it look like just a bunch of monkeys fucking a football out there. It looked pathetic. Now, it's funny to laugh at in the moment, but in hindsight, it's pretty sad. If the race wasn't already sad enough, that solidified it as the worst race of the weekend by far. To watch him park the car there and then just leave it there and not have a care in the world. Like he was making the right choice. Like he was doing the right thing. Like he was doing right by his team. You know what? He's not doing right by his team. Because guess what? He's still going to get fined. He's still going to get dock points. And guess what? He's getting suspended. And if I am NASCAR, I am suspending him. I'm suspending him at least a race where he's not showing up to COTA next week. He can't race at COTA. He gets dock points, and I'm fining him at least $10,000. Now, some people might say, "Oh, you're just being a big, grudge person, or you're a Debbie Downer or whatever fucking BS thing you want to say in this situation. But if you want to sit there and criticize Kyle Busch for doing the same exact thing, if anything, what Josh Williams did was way worse, as I said. If you want to sit there and criticize Kyle Busch for doing something much less worse than what Josh Williams did, then you have to set the same precedent for Josh Williams. I don't care how cool you think he looks or how much you think he's like you because he has a fucking mullet and a beard and he looks like a generic redneck and he's probably he's just like one of the boys. I don't care what you think. The fact of the matter is his actions are a lot worse than what Kyle Busch did. At the end of the day, I understand that the penalty is really shitty and it should have never been called. I totally agree. But the action that you chose to take immediately right after that completely wiped you away of any innocence that you had. If you had parked the car and then afterwards you go into the interviews and you say your piece in the interviews, then you have my 100% support. And not only do you have my 100% support, you're going to have everybody else's 100% support still. Not a single person is going to sit there and say, you deserve what happened to you. If you just sat there, you parked your car, like NASCAR said, you went into the interviews and you said your piece in the interviews, not a single person is going to sit there and go, yeah, you deserve to get parked. No, everybody's going to be on your side. But you chose to take the baby route, go park your car in the start-finish line in some weird attempt to try and, oh, I'm really standing up to NASCAR, and no, man, you made yourself look like an idiot. And it made the Xfinity Series and it made NASCAR look any more Busch. It made NASCAR look way more Busch League than it needed to look, especially on that day. That was the worst day that you probably could have chose to do some Busch League shit like that. Because for how insanely bad the racing already was and how insanely embarrassing the racing was up to that point, to turn around and do that, that's the dumb shit that you do in your local short track when nobody's watching. Or when nobody cares. He even said in his post-race, after he had gotten out of the NASCAR hauler and he got bombarded by interviewers, he had said that. He's like, yeah, I did that when I was racing at my local short track. I'm like, yeah, because that's where that kind of shit belongs. You do that shit at your local short track. At the end of the day, it was so moronic to do that. It was embarrassing. And to anybody who sits there and wants to say that his choice was the right choice, boy, do I not want you in my life. Because if that's the type of choices that you want to make, and that's how you respond to somebody telling you something you don't want to hear, boy, do I not want to have anything to do with you. Sorry, but at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, he fucked himself and he fucked his own team. NASCAR's not going to pay the price for that. NASCAR's going to do just fine. They're going to get the same amount of viewers next week. They'll get the same amount of money next week from sponsorships. They'll get the same shit next week. But guess what? The only person who's going to suffer here is Josh Williams' team and Josh Williams himself. Doesn't matter if he wants to say after in that little thing there, like I said, he had said to some fucking NASCAR official that he doesn't care if he gets fined because he can't afford to pay it anyways. Guess what, motherfucker? You're still going to have to pay for it. Doesn't matter if you say you can't afford it or not. You're still going to have to pay for it. Somebody's going to still have to pay for it. If it's not you, then it's your fucking team. And that team is already small on funds as it is because it is a lower-end team. It is a underfunded team. The last thing you need is getting fined $10,000 for doing some dumb shit like that. And like I said, if he had just pulled down into the garage, said his piece in the interview section, he would have still had all the support from everybody. And guess what? He wouldn't be getting fined $10,000 probably and suspended a race next week. Good job. What a dumb-ass choice. What a terrible decision to make. And I do not understand why somebody like him. I understand why, because Josh Williams is, like I said, he's the stereotypical redneck, so it's easy to support him. But what I don't understand is why he's getting all the love, and a year ago, Kyle Busch got ripped apart. I mean, like I said, I already know the answer, but why does nobody see that? Why is nobody pointing that out? Double standard is insane in that scenario. And like I said, I don't even like Kyle Busch that much. I try to be as unbiased as I possibly can, and trust me, I can understand why people don't like him. There's a lot of stuff that Kyle Busch did over the years that would really make you want to hate him. So I can completely understand why you didn't like his decision to park the car on pit lane right in front of the entrance to the garage area and then just leave the car there and walk away. I'm not defending what Kyle Busch did. I still think that him doing that was pretty freaking stupid. Regardless if he can make the turn into the garage area or not, for him to park the car there like that was pretty damn childish. But what Josh Williams did was childish tenfold. And I'm sorry. But if you're being compared to Antonio Brown and his little exit that he did, that's never a good comparison. That's never something that you want. Antonio Brown's little exit that he did in that Jets game where the Bucks played the Jets and he did his tear off all of his uniform and all of his padding, throw his, uniform in the crowd and all of this shit, and then run across the field half naked and then piecing out everybody as he leaves. That's not something that you want to be compared to. That's not something that you want to be associated with in any way, shape, or form. That was beyond embarrassing. It killed Antonio Brown's career, and it killed all the credibility that he had among most people. It killed it. People looked at him and went, wow, he's got some mental issues. Now, nobody's going to look at Josh Williams and go, wow, he's got some mental issues. But for anybody to sit there and look at what Josh Williams did and applaud it, what is wrong with you? Why are you applauding awful behavior? There's nothing cool about what he did. That was embarrassing. And that's why NASCAR is going to fine him. And that's why NASCAR is going to suspend him. Because if you're going to tell me that that's something that you want to support, good for you. I want nothing to do with that. And I hope that we never have to see that ever again. Because like I said, that was beyond embarrassing. That was so Bush League bullshit that anybody who sits there and applauds that, take a look in the mirror. Take a look in the mirror and realize what you're supporting. Maybe try and take a step back and don't just be such a fanboy and look at him and just because you think he's cool and you like the way he looks or the way he acts or the type of person that he is on the outside. Maybe actually just look at the actual action that he took and take him out. Put fucking Kevin Harvick in there. Put Denny Hamlin in there. Put Kyle Larson in there. Put any other regular-looking driver in the Cup Series or even the Truck Series. Put Matt Crafton in there. What do you think the reaction would be? Man, that's pretty embarrassing. That's pretty sad. That's some baby shit. That's throwing the temper tantrum beyond belief. But yet he gets a pass. Why? Good question. To me, it was embarrassing. I never want to ever see anything like that ever again in NASCAR, and it's not something that's fun or entertaining to me. That's Bush League. Guys fighting on pit road because their tempers get flared and they end up getting in, and they're fighting because of some wreck that happened on the track. That's one thing. Some people might think that's Bush League, but that's been a part of the sport forever. That's always going to be there. Fighting it's a rarity. It doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to anymore, but guys tempers flare between drivers. That's always been something that's been forever. You know, NASCAR's greatest moment in its history had to do with a fight after a wreck. So it's always going to be a part of the sport. It's not every week. It's every now and then. It's definitely a rarity nowadays, but it still happens every now and then. Guys getting into pushing, shoving matches, or guys throw hands, something along those lines. Guys will get into arguments. Guys will say stuff in interviews. Guys will wreck each other on the track. Guys will do some stuff like that. But the only time you see stuff like that, where you park your freaking car in the start-finish line and then just leave it there, that's the stupid shit that you see on short tracks at your local. That's the stupid shit you see on your local short track. That is fun to see on your local short track because, let's be honest, I'm sorry, but the racing on your local short track means jack shit. But if that's your thing that you want to broadcast to a million some people on FS1, and this is the second tier racing, and the guy's leaving his car in the middle of the track during a caution flag because the call didn't go his way, that's embarrassing. That's not cool. That's not funny. That's not, oh, I have a fan for life. I'm a fan for life of that guy now. No, that is embarrassing. That's Bush League. I know that's a very hot take right now, and everybody else is not going to be a fan of what I have to say about that, but take a step back and realize what that actually was. Look at other examples that are similar to that. See the other reactions that other drivers got, and why does that guy get a pass? He doesn't get a pass. Just be fair. That's all I'm asking. If one guy gets castrated for it, then another guy gets castrated for it. If one guy like Kyle Busch gets torn apart all over online and on social media, and then other drivers saying it, all of them guys just tear him apart for it, then why doesn't Josh Williams get the same treatment? Why not? Don't care what the reputation of Kyle Busch compared to Josh Williams is. I don't care if Josh Williams disagrees with the call. Park your car in the garage area, get out of the car, say your piece in the media, and then you'll have a shit ton more people that'll respect you way more than just parking your car on the goddamn start-finish line like a moron. I wouldn't be sitting here calling you a moron if you didn't do that. I wouldn't sit here having such a problem if you just pulled your damn car onto the pit lane, got out, said your piece to the media, and then moved on. Then NASCAR can't fine you. NASCAR can't suspend you. NASCAR can't kick you out of the car for a week. But way to go. You made a dumbass choice, and now you get the consequences for it. And guess what? Everybody will sit there and, hound on NASCAR. They'll hound on NASCAR for penalizing him. They'll hound on NASCAR for suspending him. And they'll hound on NASCAR for fining him. But guess what? He deserves every single bit of that. Now, I don't think it should be drastic. I think it should be, like I said, I would suspend him for just a race, fine him $10,000, and that's it. Move on from there. Say, don't ever do that again. I don't know what this punishment will be for him. Maybe he won't get suspended and he'll just get fined, which, if he's not suspended and he's just fined, that's fine with me too. I don't think it needs to be over the top. I don't think he needs to be kicked out for the season. I don't think it's that much of a big deal that it has to be a giant penalty. But I think it needs to be enough to send a message. So that's why I said I would suspend him for a race and fine him $10,000. My assumption is that NASCAR probably won't suspend him. They'll just fine him, which is fine by me. And it doesn't matter anyways because Denny Hamlin said he'll pay his fine regardless. So Josh Williams just gets a little slap on the wrist, and then he'll get a hell of a lot more money for it because people will buy his fucking T-shirts and people will buy his merchandise and go to his shop and buy his shit just because of that one thing. So, regardless, though, I said my piece on that. It'll be another 30-some minutes of content for you to listen to. Thank you again so much for listening. Here is episode 6.5, Stuck in Neutral Radio. This will be about an hour after the episode 6 will be released. Thank you all so much for listening to this little mini rant. Hope you all enjoyed. And if you agree with me, I'd love to hear it, to know I'm not alone out there in this opinion. But if you disagree with me, please go into the comments section, detail to me exactly why I'm so wrong in thinking that his little move that he did at Atlanta was Bush League. Go ahead and tell me why. I'd love to know why. I'd love to know other people's opinion. I'm not going to sit here and, if, although I disagree, and I probably will disagree no matter what you say, if you have a different opinion, tell me why. Like, I'm not going to sit here and just absolutely rip you apart in the comments section or tell you you're an absolute moron. I'll tell you that I completely disagree, and I think, that what he did was still really stupid. But, if you're a fan of him for life for that, then, like I said, I'm probably not going to want to hang around you much, but good for you, I guess. I don't know. Like I said, I'm probably in the minority on this one, but I just don't see. Like I said, I already said it a million times, but I just don't see why one guy gets a pass and gets praised for it, and then another guy gets ripped apart and tore to shreds and called a bitch and a baby for it. So, regardless, though, that'll do it for this little extra bit. Hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next week.